Hello, hello, hello. I just wanted to jump on here real quick because I was sitting here this afternoon after getting some work done, and I'm about to pick up my daughter from band practice. And I always have this little window in between where I do yoga or something. As you can see, I still look sweaty, or I take a shower, whatever like that, but I just take time. And so I was just coming out of meditation a second ago, and that's usually when I get the best downloads. And I was thinking to myself, why as women do we find it so hard to put ourselves first? And like one of the primary things that came to mind is like it's so deeply built into the matriarchs that we come from. I know growing up in the household that I was in, and I used to watch my mom all the time. She did everything. When I tell you everything, she did everything. Every event, every opportunity, every expansion, the new house, the way the house looked, she did everything. And when I say everything, I'm not saying that my dad did nothing, but what I mean is that he was very secondary in most of those processes. He didn't remember birthdays as much and all this kind of stuff. And so that whole classic trope about married single moms. And I never even thought about that until I got older. And I was like, I come from a two-parent home, so why do I have this mindset and this energy? And I was thinking it's because I experienced what a lot of single moms experience, in a sense, because my mom was always worried about money, always stressed out about not making ends meet, always stressed out about the mortgage and stuff like that. And my dad, like, not so much, like he did what he did. And if it wasn't enough, it kind of just wasn't enough. And she was always frustrated about it. And I remember she told us one time that if the reason why she didn't get divorced in all of those 20 some odd years is because she knew that if she took us out of the house or took my dad out of the house, that we would not have a relationship with our dad. Because she said that he was not going to put in the effort, the time, and the energy to make sure that he saw y'all and that he was an active player in your life. So really, she sacrificed herself in everything that she needed in the area of having a good marriage, a supportive husband, a quality mate, and all those things. And this is saying this, well, my dad's a very nice guy. And so when people say that, they'd be like, oh, he must be horrible. He's not. He's nice. But you can be nice and ineffective at the same time. And it's okay. Both of those things can be true at the same time. And so she knew that that was going to be a thing. And so that was her biggest thing. And they literally got divorced when I was 18 years old, and I'm the youngest of 6 kids. So she waited and she did her time, right? And then another thing she said she did was she didn't want the house that we had grew up in, because she felt like if she took the house that he was never going to get another one for himself. All of the messages, and he never did. He has the same house, it's wonderful. But I mean, she was right. All of the messages that I received as a kid, as a young woman, was that you sacrifice yourself so that everybody else is okay. You make sure that everybody else has on clean socks, clean underwears, new clothing, new shoes, and all that, and then you go make do. She would do it for events. We would go to places for things. She would sew all of our clothing for like graduations or like religious events or holidays, and she would be the very last one that she was working on. Like her dress would be the last dress that she would sew. Putting on her clothing and her makeup and putting herself together was the very last thing that happened. And even when you think about the households, when women do all this work in the households and they're continuously showing up for the kids and showing up for the relationships, showing up for the extended family too, because that's a huge thing, right? And they're continuously doing this. Somehow we've got in our minds trained that there's something wrong with a woman who makes food and then she sits down and eats first. It's like, what is wrong with that? You know what I mean? Like, what is the problem with that? I got out of that mindset a long time ago, and with my daughters, I was like, sometimes when I cook, I don't want to put it on your plate, and it should be okay. You're big enough to make your own food. And most of the time I do it because I want to do it. But whenever I'm in those modes to where I'm just like, I'm going to make my food, I'm like, food's finished. And they go, oh, okay. So they know that I'm not going to ever just stick myself at the bottom when I'm not in the mood to do so, or either when it's not a good time to do so, right? And when I mentioned religion a second ago, religious mindsets is a lot of the ways that these things were happening. Because most of what we encountered was always pushing women to the back. You do all the work in the background, and then the men take the glory for it. So it's a common mindset. I remember my mom was telling me on the phone a couple of years ago, maybe it was like last year, and she was like, she was into carpentry, like did a lot of blueprints. She could build things, build houses, build walls, build rooms. Like, she's one of those kind of people. Like, that's what she always did when we were a kid, right? We would make fun and say we come home from school and there would be a wall knocked down here and then a new one up in another spot. And so a lot of the men in the religious environment we were in, they didn't know how to do this work. And so she would do it, and she would get other women to help her, other sisters to help her do this work. And when they had like visitors coming from other mosques in the city, right? Other masjids, mosques, whatever you call it, in the city, they would tell her to go hide in the back and don't tell anybody that you've been doing this work. So like the messages are very, very, very clear early on for a lot of women that what you need and what's important for you is not important. And then the bigger issue comes in when you have newer generations that pop up and younger women. I was one of them, and we're like, this just doesn't feel right, right? And when you start creating that freedom for yourself and that mobility for yourself and that autonomy for yourself, many of the older matriarchs, they'll try to hold you down and hold you in space because they didn't get the luxury of that, because they allowed that situation to cater to their lives. And I'm always like, it was a different time, it was a different space, it was a different energy. Women needed men a whole lot for a lot of other things. So you can't really look at your kids and say, well, if I did this, then they need to do that, right? I was just telling my daughter the other day, like, I don't even know why I got married. Like, I was like 28 years old. I thought it was this is time, it's what you do. And it wasn't really a good foundation. And like, it wasn't really nobody telling me not to do it. And so I just kind of charged my way into it. And then I had 2 kids back to back. My girls are not even 2 years apart. And it's like, I just was doing a thing. And then I looked up, and when the little one right before she was learning how to walk, and I was like, I got to get out of this. And so many of the older matriarchs around me were mad. They were mad because I had only been married for two and a half years. We were together for 7 years, but I'd only been married for 2.5. And they were like, you didn't even give it a try. I'm like, I don't have to. It's going downhill. It's clearly going downhill. And what happened was I realized how angry and how put out and how self-sacrificial I was, and how I was never having any needs met. And nobody really cared about what I needed, especially not the person I was married to. It's like I was just this little baby machine. I could barely breastfeed because people kept popping up at the house. There was no boundaries. It was always something. Everybody was in the business. And so when I think back to that, I was like, I've seen this before. It was like a movie. Last night I fell asleep being so incredibly grateful that I left that marriage in 2.5 years. I was like, some lessons you just don't have to take 20 years to learn. Because I watched my mom over the years become angry and become bitter and become depressed and anxious and very insecure and always worrying about what people are saying, what they're talking about, what they're doing, and trying to control everybody and everything. And none of it gets you anywhere. So when you learn those messages early on that you and who you are and what your value is not really important, and all that's important about you is how you can serve other people, is how you show up for other people, and what you got to give to other people, you tend to walk through that and think like, okay, I know I'm a good woman. I cook every night. I used to work with this woman I worked in Ann Taylor when I was like, I don't know, somewhere in my 20s. I had so many jobs, it's not even funny. But I worked at Ann Taylor, and I remember working with this woman every night, and she was married. And now that I look back, I thought she was older. She probably was like 30. But she was heavily into like religion, and she was like, every night she was like, no matter what, we used to leave work at like 10 o'clock at night. She said, well, no matter what, every night I make sure that food is thawed out and ready to be cooked tomorrow, because I cook before I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and cook before everybody gets up in the house. She says, I make sure my floors are swept and mopped every single night. And I was like, that's fine and dandy, but you're here, you're working. You're working full time with the rest of us, and you're getting home at 10 o'clock at night. And I was just thinking to myself, like, how virtuous she felt. Like, she felt like the best woman in the world. Like, she was the highest quality of woman because she was putting herself and her needs completely on the back burner. And I can tell you this, through those years where that was the case for me, I looked like crap. If I'm being honest with you, when I look back at them pictures, like, Google does the little reviews, and it's just like, Google 2012. And I'm like, don't show me that. It pops up. And I'm just like, girl, what a mess. It's a mess. It's a mess because I can clearly see where I was failing myself. And in so many instances, I was looking around for other people to kind of show me direction in that way, but they really can't, and they don't know how if they're coming from the same background as you are, right? I even see it at family events, the way the women get up and scurry around and make sure everything done and this and all that kind of stuff, and making men's plates and all this kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with it. But what space is that coming from? What place is that showing up from? Right? Whenever I see that, I'm just like, what is happening? I'll mention this. It's probably funny though, but there's a person that one of my siblings is dating, and like she shows up and like she never stops doing things. Like she's waiting on people hand and foot. I'm like, girl, you don't even have a ring on your finger. Not that she needs to have a ring, but what I mean is that what is your requirement from other people that you that makes you want to serve and do so much? Because I'm like, you ran rampant, and you can look at people, you can look at women and tell that they're not fully taking care of themselves, that they're not prioritizing themselves, that they're not getting enough sleep. I read a study 2 days ago that talked about how women needed more sleep at night than their male counterparts in order to function properly. Because if you think about it, even if you aren't having babies, but for the women that have had babies and are or plan to or even thinking about it or child free, I love it, because I already know if I would have made it to like 35, I would have definitely been a child free woman. But I love my little girls. But I'm just like, when you are trying to create new life inside of you and stuff, we got this mindset from this patriarchal environment that it takes like 6 weeks for us to head back to a job. Like, that's insane. I was so angry and livid that I was in a situation to where I had my daughters and I had to go right back to work. The only reason why I didn't go back to work with the second one is because that's when I left. That's when I got divorced. Because I was like, you know what? There's no peace and I'm not going to be able to relax. I got that little 1 bedroom. I got a house. It was a rental house, I remember. I got that little rental house, and that was the only reason why I got to have time with my daughter and spend time with her, is because I was no longer in a space to where I was expected to serve without any replenishment in my direction. And it's like, how are you expected to breastfeed? You have this entire life growing inside of you, feeding on every aspect of who you are. And you're expected to just shuffle on and keep taking care of everybody and everything, right? And the messages are loud and clear everywhere you go, everything you do. Even if you sit in for a moment, you can just scroll through social media and you see what people are always taking pride in, how self-sacrificial a woman is. Oh, that's a good woman, or that's a good mom. So it's negative if a mom is just like, you know what? Not today. Today, this one day of the week, I'm not going to put everybody first. And it's just like, catch that on video, then put it in the social media platform. She's a horrible mom. She's a horrible whatever. And you already know, when you go out, if you have kids or something, or you see children acting up, or you see children being a certain way online, half of the comments are talking about, where's the mom? Bet they're raised by a single mom. But I'm like, who's talking about what influence another partner should have on it? And it's the last thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to self-sacrifice. Recently, I was mentioning this in another video. I cut ties with my ex-mother-in-law because she had been around for a lot of years. She was pretty much standing in the gap of the relationship that I had with the children in that other side of the family, because the ex-husband was much too immature to co-parent. And it's like, well, you know what? We're not together. You don't exist. And I'm like, but you got these kids, whatever. So I was, you see somebody crash in a vehicle and you can't stop them, and then they get the result of that crash, and then they whine about it later. I'm like, you made that. You got to bond and develop emotional ties with children when they're young. You can do something later, but most of the time they talk to you because they feel bad. It's not because they're genuinely connected. But anyway, I said all this. And so over the time, I was so bothered that there was never any mention made of that I was doing all of the work. And I just think that it's so unacceptable that we've come into society to where so many women are just doing all of the work. They're paying all the bills. They're taking care of the children. And there are other women standing by and looking on this thing and acting like it's normal and it's okay and it's regular. And I didn't agree with that. And I put up with the connection for a long time. But like when the oldest one, she was 17, when she started driving and she got a car directly after that, I got her a car. I'm like, you know what? we don't need to. I wrote her a letter and said this relationship needs to be done, because I feel like you've never acknowledged the sacrifice. You've never acknowledged the things that your son has done and all this, and the connection, how awful it's been, and how much I had to self-sacrifice, and how so many things for me had to be organized around solely taking care of my children when he was sitting right there. And she just liked to act like it didn't exist. And the funniest part is that I was like, I really don't need to be in this connection anymore. And so now they can clearly see that it was really me, which was another self-sacrificing thing, holding that together. I was forcing the children to go visit on the weekends. I was making them, when they were 13, 14 years old, they were like, oh, we don't want to go. And I'm like, oh, you're going, right? First of all, because I wanted free time. But I was like, no, you're going, because that's your people. You need to be connected, blah, blah, blah. And you can do all that stuff. But if people are not making the right effort, if they're not being quality people that the children can connect to in a certain way, it's not going to matter. And so my daughter made me laugh the other day, because I don't ask them anything about the people, but she told me, she was like, you know what? They always ask me if you're telling, if the reason why we can't come is because of you. And I was like, I'm always forcing y'all out the door. What? I'm always trying to get y'all to go. And it's so funny that people can think that the whole time. And so the whole time I'm self-sacrificing. I'm putting on a good face. I'm making sure everybody's getting along. I'm making sure the meetups are happening. I'm making sure the children are being dropped off. I'm switching things around their schedule. I'm moving dental appointments to make sure it accommodates whatever they got going on, and doing all that to make that happen. And at the end of the day, only a month ago, they're asking, is she saying things to make y'all not want to come visit us? And I'm like, and it lets you know that all that self-sacrifice will get you nothing. Nothing. I watched my mom do it my entire life. And I don't feel like it yielded her what she put into it. And I see so many people doing that as on autopilot. And it doesn't mean that you have to like start breaking off all relationships and leaving marriages and abandoning children or anything like that. But you need to start carving out what belongs to me. Where can I make myself a priority? How can I show up for myself this week? How can I value my presence? And I made another video about resting in your feminine energy. And this is along the lines of the same thing. It's like, where am I self-sacrificing, and why do I think I need to do that? It's like, everything cannot fall on you. Everything cannot fall on a mother. Everything cannot fall on a wife. And you even see in relationships, sometimes you don't even have a social life or any real connections or holiday celebrations unless women are doing it, right? I even had a bone to pick with my dad, because I'm just like, you know what? You ain't never sent a birthday card or anything like that, because he comes from a time period to where who you're married to, your wife, they do all those things. And I understand that, and I completely get it. But I'm up at the point in my life where I'm holding people to the same standards. And I'm just like, because it's necessary. Because I'm not going to get to the later years in my life and be broken down and having arthritis and having high blood pressure and being aching this and that because I couldn't make a yoga class and I couldn't eat right because I was too busy grabbing food on the go and not taking care of myself. I'm not going to do that. I'm never going to do that. If I'm in environments where I feel like people are not recognizing the whole value of me, I don't even care who they are. I'm not going in those environments. I don't self-sacrifice. I don't care how bad I look to other people. Some people, they can't wait to try to guilt you into looking bad or feeling bad about not showing up for them in a certain kind of way. I don't care. I'm like, what's the worst they can do? Talk about me? They don't pay my bills. They don't pay my mortgage. They don't pick up my children from after school sports. And speaking of that, I need to leave in a few minutes. They don't do that. They don't, get me promotions. They don't support my career. They don't even watch this YouTube channel. They don't buy my books. Why do I care what they think? Why do I care if people give me a cold shoulder who don't see the full value of me anyway? And so like you're being tolerated in so many instances, but yet you're sacrificing yourself. And I think women need to be retrained in that area. It's like, it's not always about, well, I'm not doing nothing and I'm angry and I'm lazy and I'm bitter. That's not the direction. It's not the other end of the spectrum, but it's like, where in your life are you doing those things? And I mentioned that the other day in another video. It's like, when people ask you to do all these things, really think and sit back and say, is this something I want to do? Or am I just trying to please these other people around me? Because so much of what we do is based in, let me please these other people around me, right? And it doesn't mean you don't do anything. Like last night I came home And my youngest daughter, who's never worn braids before, is sick of it. She's been doing her hair, but I felt like because she's manipulating it every day, she's breaking it off. And I was like, we need to do something protective on your hair. And so she was like, fine, I'll do braids, right? She's never had them. The other one wore braids for 4 years straight. Her hair is all the way down here. And I think she see how healthy her sister's hair is, and she's like, And so I sat there and I'm like, you got a little bit head. It took me 4 hours. I didn't feel stretched. I didn't feel like I was sacrificing myself. I didn't feel badgered or bothered. I did it because I wanted to do it. And it's like, it doesn't mean you don't do anything. It just means that you're doing things because you do want to do it. You want to feel good about it. Well, I was serving her, but at the same time, I wanted to see the finished outcome. I wanted to see how cute her little hair was going to be, right? And it came out good. And I actually learned how to do knotless braids yesterday because I didn't know how to do knotless. I only ever did the ones with the knots, a while ago for the other daughter. And so it doesn't mean you don't give yourself and you don't show up for things or do things, but in what spirit are you doing it? What place is that coming from, right? So I think I've talked long enough on this subject, why I think it's so hard for women to put themselves first. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day.